I stood in my father's corner office at Preston Manufacturing, watching my younger sister Madison smirk as our father delivered his ultimatum. You're suspended without pay until you apologize to Madison for questioning her promotion. I, Russell, the operations director who'd worked there 12 years since college, simply said, "All right," and walked out. Madison's triumphant smile burned in my memory. That night I drafted my resignation letter and something more. A detailed post about the company's illegal practices I'd documented for years. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, I arrived at Preston Manufacturing at 5 o'clock, 2 hours before anyone else would show up. The parking lot was empty, except for the security guard's sedan, and the November air bit through my coat as I walked through the employee entrance one last time. I needed to clean out my desk before the circus began. As I packed 12 years of my life into cardboard boxes, my mind drifted back to how this whole mess started. Madison had joined the company 2 years ago, fresh from her art degree at a liberal arts college. Within 3 months, our father had made her vice president of marketing. She had zero experience in manufacturing, had never worked a day in any company, and couldn't even read a basic profit and loss statement. But she was his princess from his second marriage, and that was all the qualification she needed. I remembered the day she walked in, wearing a designer suit that cost more than most employees made in a month. Our father had called an all-hands meeting to introduce her, going on and on about fresh perspectives and innovative thinking. The employees who had worked their way up for years stood there, forcing smiles while watching someone half their age get handed what they'd spent decades trying to achieve. Meanwhile, I had started at Preston as a junior analyst right out of college. I worked 16-hour days, learned every aspect of the business from the factory floor up. Over 12 years, I had built systems that saved the company millions of dollars. I restructured our supply chain, reducing costs by 30%. I had negotiated contracts with suppliers that gave us the best rates in the industry. I had grown our operation from 50 employees to 500, from 1 facility to 3. The incident that triggered my suspension had happened yesterday in the boardroom. Madison had presented her new marketing initiative, requesting $2 million to hire her college friend's consulting firm. When I looked at the proposal, it was clear this firm had no experience in industrial manufacturing marketing. They specialized in fashion brands and social media influencers. I had asked simple questions. What was the expected return on investment? Had we considered established firms with manufacturing experience? How would this integrate with our existing sales strategy? Madison's face had turned red. Then the tears started. "Russell is bullying me again," she had told our father. "He never supports my ideas. He thinks because he's been here longer, he knows everything." This is exactly the kind of toxic masculinity that holds companies back. Our father's face had darkened. Without even looking at the proposal or considering my questions, he had stood up. "Russell, you need to apologize to your sister right now." "For asking about return on investment?" I had asked, genuinely confused. "For undermining her authority and making her feel unwelcome in her own family's company," he had shot back. That's when he had delivered the suspension ultimatum. The other board members had sat there in uncomfortable silence. Robert, our CFO, had tried to speak up, but our father had shut him down with a look. Now, as I pulled files from my desk drawer, I found something that made me pause. It was a report I had submitted 6 months ago, a comprehensive cost reduction strategy that would save the company $4 million annually. My name had been on it when I submitted it, but here was a copy from last month's board packet, and the author's name had been changed to Madison Preston. She had been taking credit for my work, and our father had been letting her. I reached deeper into the drawer and found the USB drive I had hidden there 2 years ago. On it was documentation I had been collecting, evidence of our father's tax evasion schemes, the offshore accounts he used to hide profits, the safety violations he had ordered me to ignore, the inspectors he had bribed. I had kept it all, hoping I would never need to use it, hoping he would change. But now I understood he never would. My phone buzzed. A text from my father at 6 in the morning. "Stop being stubborn. Just apologize and we can move forward. This is beneath you, son." I looked at the text for a long moment. Then I opened LinkedIn on my phone. I had written my resignation letter the night before, but I had also written something else. A post about my journey at Preston Manufacturing, my accomplishments, the systems I had built, the value I had created. I kept it professional. No mention of the family drama or illegal activities. Just facts about what I had achieved and that I was exploring new opportunities. At 6:30, I hit post and tagged 20 industry leaders I knew personally. Within minutes, the likes and comments started rolling in. I was taping up the last box when I heard the elevator ding. Madison walked in at 6:45, earlier than she had ever arrived before. She was coming to gloat, to see me humbled. She walked toward my office with a smile on her face, probably expecting to find me there, suspended and defeated. Instead, she found Patricia, my assistant of 8 years, crying as she looked at my empty office. "Where is he?" Madison demanded. Patricia held up her phone, showing my LinkedIn post. "He's gone. He resigned." The smile slid off Madison's face like water off a windshield. Madison grabbed Patricia's phone, her manicured fingers trembling as she read my LinkedIn post. Her face went from confused to panicked in about 10 seconds. The post was professional but devastating in its simplicity. I had listed every major achievement from my 12 years, the contracts I had negotiated, the systems I had built, the revenue I had generated. The manufacturing world is small, and everyone knew Preston's success was built on operational excellence. Now they knew who had been behind it. "This has 300 likes already," Madison whispered, her voice cracking. "How is that possible?" "He posted it 20 minutes ago." Patricia took her phone back, wiping her tears. "Because everyone in the industry knows Russell. He's the reason this company runs." Within an hour, my phone was buzzing nonstop. 3 major competitors had already reached out with offers. James Hartford from Hartwell Corporation had sent a simple message: "Name your price." Sarah Mitchell from Apex Industries had written, "I have an executive position with your name on it." Even David Chen from the startup Nexus Manufacturing had contacted me, offering equity and a C-suite role. Back at Preston, Madison was spiraling. She ran to her computer, trying to delete my company access, only to discover I had already removed myself from all systems at 5 that morning. She attempted to access my project files, but every folder required passwords she didn't have. The operational databases, the supplier contracts, the production schedules, all locked. Thomas, the company lawyer, burst into her office at 8 o'clock, his face pale and sweaty despite the cool morning. "Tell me Russell didn't post anything else. Tell me he just resigned." "What are you talking about?" Madison asked, still trying to figure out how to access my files. "I'm talking about the documentation he has. The records. Does he still have them?" Madison looked blank. "What records?" Thomas slumped in the chair. "You really don't know anything about this company, do you?" The insult would normally have sent Madison into tears, but she was too confused to be offended. Before Thomas could explain, her phone rang. It was Robert, the CFO, telling her she needed to run the 9 o'clock operations meeting since Russell was gone. The meeting was a disaster. Madison stood in front of 20 department heads, trying to read from Russell's notes that Patricia had given her. But when questions came, she was lost. "What about the Johnson Industries order?" asked Mark from shipping. Russell was negotiating a special freight arrangement. "I'll have to get back to you on that," Madison said. "The supplier from Ohio needs confirmation on the modified payment terms Russell promised," added Jennifer from procurement. "I'll look into it," Madison replied, her voice getting smaller. "We have 3 union grievances that Russell was mediating," said Paul from HR. "The meetings are scheduled for this afternoon." Madison just stared at him. She didn't even know the company had union contracts. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown with my friend William, who worked as a business journalist for the Manufacturing Gazette. I slid a folder across the table to him. "This is all off the record for now," I said. "But you might want to start looking into Preston Manufacturing's safety record." William opened the folder, his eyes widening as he saw the photos and documentation. There was Marcus, a machine operator who had lost 2 fingers, because my father had refused to update safety equipment. There were the falsified inspection reports, the bribed inspectors, the OSHA violations that had been covered up. "Russell, this is huge," William said. "People could have died." "Someone almost did," I replied. "And when I tried to fix it, I was told it would cost too much." My father said, and I quote, "Workers know the risks when they sign up." Back at Preston, Madison was on the phone with our father, who was at his golf club for his regular Thursday morning game. "Dad, you need to come back. Everything's falling apart," she pleaded. "Don't be dramatic, Madison. Russell's just having a tantrum. He'll be back by Monday when he needs the money." "No, Dad, you don't understand. Clients are calling. Johnson Industries wants to know if Russell's departure means delays in their order. Thompson Steel is asking who their new account manager will be. 3 other clients have already requested meetings to discuss their concerns." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Handle it, Madison. That's why I made you vice president. But I don't know how to handle it. I don't even understand what Russell did here." "Figure it out." Our father snapped and hung up. Madison sat at her desk, staring at the wall of awards and certificates in her office. Most of them were for initiatives Russell had led, but she had taken credit for. She was starting to realize that she had no idea how to actually run anything. At 11:45, the phone in the executive conference room rang. Thomas answered it, then went pale again. "Yes, this is the legal department. The Russell Preston situation?" "What do you mean, situation?" "He resigned this morning." "Documentation?" "What documentation?" He hung up and immediately called my father. "We have a problem. The Department of Labor just called. They're asking about Russell and wanting to see documentation about his suspension and resignation. Someone tipped them off about potential wrongful termination and workplace harassment." My father finally left his golf game and headed back to the office. But by then, the first domino had already fallen, and there was no stopping what was coming. I was sitting in my apartment, laptop open, fielding job offers when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was Sandra Williams, head of HR at Preston. She was one of the good ones, someone who had always tried to do right by employees, despite my father's resistance. "Russell, I'm not supposed to be calling you, but you should know, Madison just discovered you were handling 70% of the company's operational decisions. She's in complete panic mode." I wasn't surprised. Over the years, I had quietly taken on more and more responsibility as my father focused on his golf game, and Madison played at being an executive. "Thanks for the heads up, Sandra. Are you okay there?" "I'm updating my resume," she said quietly. "This place is about to implode." She was right. My father had rushed back from the golf club to find his worst nightmare unfolding. 3 major clients representing $30 million in annual revenue had called emergency meetings. They all had the same concern. With Russell gone, who would ensure their orders were fulfilled correctly and on time? My father had brushed them off initially, assuring them that Madison would handle everything. But when Johnson Industries asked Madison specific questions about their customized alloy specifications and she couldn't answer, they had formally requested a meeting with senior leadership to reassess their partnership. In the CFO's office, Robert was having a different conversation with my father. "You need to make Russell a counteroffer," my father demanded. "Whatever it takes." Robert pulled up his computer screen. "I've been telling you for 3 years that Russell was underpaid. He was making $120,000. The market rate for someone with his experience and responsibilities is between $200,000 and $250,000. Hartwell just offered him $350 plus equity." My father's face went red. "That's impossible. No operations director makes that much." "He wasn't just an operations director," Robert said carefully. "He was essentially running this company. And you gave Madison, with 0 experience, a salary of $180,000 plus bonuses." The truth was hard to swallow, but my father was still in denial. "He'll come back. This is his family's company." "Is it?" Robert asked. "Because from where I sit, you made it pretty clear that it was Madison's company." While they were arguing, I was on the phone with OSHA's whistleblower hotline. I had decided that the safety violations couldn't be ignored anymore. Marcus and the other workers deserve justice. "I have documentation of multiple safety violations at Preston Manufacturing," I said. including evidence of bribed inspectors and falsified reports. The agent on the other end took down all the information. "We take these allegations very seriously, Mr. Preston. Can you send us the documentation?" "Already uploaded to your secure portal," I replied. Back at Preston, Madison was trying to salvage the Johnson Industries meeting. She had spent 2 hours trying to understand Russell's notes, but technical specifications for industrial alloys might as well have been written in ancient Greek to her. "So you need the carbon steel with 0.08 carbon content?" she said, reading from the notes. "No," Mr. Johnson said, clearly frustrated. "We specifically negotiated with Russell for 0.06 for better weldability. This is exactly why we're concerned. These details matter in our industry." Madison's assistant interrupted the meeting. "Miss Preston, your father is trying to reach Russell, but his phone is going straight to voicemail." My father had finally swallowed his pride enough to call me, but I had blocked his number. I wasn't interested in his demands or his half-hearted attempts to fix this. By 3 o'clock, things had gotten worse. Thomas had discovered that my LinkedIn post had been shared 5,000 times. Industry newsletters were picking it up as a story about talent retention and the importance of operational leadership. The headline on Manufacturing Weekly's website read, "Preston Manufacturing Loses Key Executive, a Cautionary Tale of Succession Planning." Then the local news called. "We're running a story about nepotism in family businesses," the reporter said. "We'd like to get Preston Manufacturing's comment on the departure of Russell Preston and the qualifications of Madison Preston for her role." Thomas had to physically restrain my father from taking the call and making things worse. At 4 o'clock, Madison was crying in her office. She had just come from a production floor meeting where she had tried to assert her authority, only to have the floor supervisors explain that they couldn't make the changes she wanted because they would violate the union contracts that Russell had negotiated. "I didn't even know we had union contracts," she admitted to Patricia. Patricia, who had stayed loyal to the company if not to Madison, looked at her with a mixture of pity and frustration. Russell negotiated those contracts 3 years ago. He spent 6 months working with the union to find a deal that worked for everyone. It's why we haven't had a strike when every other manufacturer in the state has. My father found Madison in her office, and for the first time she was honest with him. "I can't do this, Dad. I don't understand any of it. The suppliers, the contracts, the specifications, the unions. Russell did everything, and I just took credit for it." It was the first truthful thing she had said in 2 years, but it was too late. Meanwhile, I had just accepted the consulting offer from Hartwell Corporation. The salary was $350,000, plus equity, plus a signing bonus that would cover my living expenses for a year. But more importantly, they valued what I brought to the table. At exactly 4 o'clock, William's article dropped on the Manufacturing Gazette website. The headline was damning. "Unsafe at any speed. Inside Preston Manufacturing's culture of safety violations." The article detailed everything: Marcus's injury, the covered-up violations, the bribed inspectors. William had done his homework, verifying everything with multiple sources. My documentation was just the beginning. He had found 3 other employees willing to go on record about safety concerns that had been ignored. My father was in his office when Thomas burst in with his laptop. "We have a bigger problem than the Department of Labor," he said, showing him the article. My father read it, his face going from red to white. He wouldn't. Russell wouldn't do this to family. "He didn't," Thomas said. "He did it for the workers you ignored. There's a difference." The article had included a photo of Marcus's mangled hand and a quote from him. "Russell Preston was the only executive who ever tried to help us. He fought for safety equipment, but Mr. Preston Sr. said it was too expensive. Russell even paid for my medical bills out of his own pocket when the company insurance tried to deny the claim." My father sat back in his chair, the weight of his choices finally starting to hit him. But this was just the beginning of his downfall. Friday morning came like a hurricane. OSHA inspectors arrived at Preston Manufacturing at 7 o'clock sharp with an inspection warrant. They didn't come alone. They brought a full team, including safety engineers and compliance officers. The receptionist called my father in a panic, but he was already dealing with another crisis. The board of directors had called an emergency meeting for 8 o'clock. 3 of the 5 external board members were demanding answers about the safety violations article and my resignation. They had seen the company stock drop 15% in after-hours trading. "How did we not know about these safety violations?" demanded Charles Morrison, the longest-serving board member. "They're allegations," my father said weakly. "We don't know if they're true." "OSHA doesn't show up with a warrant based on rumors," said Barbara Chen, who ran her own manufacturing company. "And losing Russell is a disaster. He was the succession plan." "Madison is the succession plan," my father insisted. "Madison?" Barbara laughed bitterly. "The girl who can't read a balance sheet? Who just cost us the Johnson Industries contract?" Madison was in the meeting, shrinking into her chair as the board members discussed her like she wasn't there. Finally, she spoke up. "I'm not qualified," she admitted, her voice small. "I know that now. Russell did everything, and I pretended I knew what I was doing." The admission hung in the air like smoke. My father looked at his daughter with a mixture of disappointment and anger, but mostly, he looked defeated. Meanwhile, I was having my first day at Hartwell Corporation. James Hartford himself gave me the tour, introducing me to department heads who had been struggling with a supply chain issue for 6 months. "The suppliers are demanding 15% increases across the board," the supply chain director explained. "We've been stuck." I looked at their contracts, their ordering patterns, their supplier relationships. Within 2 hours, I had identified the problem. They were ordering from distributors instead of manufacturers, paying middleman fees they didn't need to pay. By lunch, I had negotiated directly with 3 manufacturers, cutting costs by 12% instead of raising them. James Hartford pulled me aside. "You just saved us $2 million in your first morning. Russell, I have to ask, why did your father let you go?" "He didn't let me go," I said. "He chose nepotism over competence. It's his loss." Back at Preston, the losses were mounting. 3 key employees submitted their resignations before noon, all citing toxic leadership and favoritism in their exit interviews. The OSHA inspection had found 17 safety violations in the first 2 hours. The production floor was shut down pending immediate repairs. Then the IRS audit notice arrived. Thomas brought it to my father personally. They received an anonymous tip about offshore accounts and tax evasion. They're requesting 5 years of financial records. My father knew immediately where the tip had come from. "Russell knows about the Cayman accounts?" "Russell knows about everything," Thomas said. "He was your operations director. He saw all the invoices, all the transfers. You had him sign off on reports that included the falsified numbers. But he benefited from those accounts too. The company's success was his success." "Did he?" Thomas asked. "You paid him half the market rate, gave his sister credit for his work, and then suspended him for asking questions. What exactly did he benefit from?" At Preston, Madison was in what used to be my office, going through the hundreds of files I had left behind. Each one was meticulously organized, with notes explaining processes, contacts, and critical information. She found a folder labeled "For Madison" and opened it. Inside was a letter I had written months ago but never sent. It detailed every time I had covered for her mistakes, the contract she had nearly blown with her ignorance, the supplier she had offended with her attitude, the union rep she had insulted without realizing it. Each time, I had stepped in, smoothed things over, fixed the problem, without anyone knowing. The last line of the letter read, "I didn't do this because I had to. I did it because you're my sister, and I hoped one day you'd want to actually learn the business instead of just playing executive." Madison broke down crying. For the first time, she understood the full weight of what she had lost, not just an employee, but a brother who had protected her despite her treatment of him. The afternoon brought more bad news. Johnson Industries officially terminated their contract, specifically citing lack of confidence in current leadership and operational capabilities. That was $10 million in annual revenue gone. 2 other major clients followed suit by end of business. At 4:30, something unexpected happened. The FBI arrived at Preston Manufacturing. 2 agents in dark suits asked to speak with my father privately. They had received information about potential tax fraud and money laundering through offshore accounts. The documentation I had provided to the IRS had triggered a criminal investigation. "Mr. Preston, we need you to come with us for questioning," one agent said. "You're not under arrest, but we strongly advise you to bring your attorney." My father left the building in an FBI sedan, while employees watched from the windows. Madison stood in the parking lot, watching her father disappear, finally understanding that the empire he had built was crumbling because of his own choices. That evening I got a call from Patricia. "Russell, I wanted you to know that Madison found the letter you left her. She's been crying for hours. Also, the FBI took your father for questioning. The whole company is in chaos." "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, Patricia," I said sincerely. "I'm not," she replied. "This needed to happen. The rot needed to be exposed. By the way, is Hartwell hiring? Send me your resume," I said. "I'll make sure it gets to the right people." As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. I had spent 12 years trying to build something great at Preston Manufacturing, only to watch my father's greed and favoritism destroy it. But maybe from the ashes, something better could be built. Monday morning brought the avalanche everyone had been expecting. Federal agents arrived at Preston Manufacturing with a court order freezing all company assets pending investigation. My father's personal accounts were frozen too, including the offshore accounts he thought were hidden. The board of directors held another emergency meeting, this time without my father, who was still dealing with federal prosecutors. The vote was unanimous. Madison was demoted from vice president to entry-level coordinator, effective immediately. Barbara Chen was appointed interim CEO, with a mandate to save what was left of the company. "Madison, you'll report to Patricia in operations," Barbara announced. "You'll learn this business from the ground up, or you'll be terminated. Your choice." Madison nodded, unable to speak. The designer suits and executive lunches were over. She would be making $35,000 a year if she could keep the job. The news of my success at Hartwell had spread throughout the industry. Manufacturing Weekly ran a feature story, "Former Preston exec saves competitor $5 million in first week." The article detailed how I had restructured Hartwell's entire supply chain, eliminating inefficiencies that had plagued them for years. James Hartford was quoted saying, "Russell Preston is the kind of operational genius that comes along once in a decade. Preston Manufacturing's loss is definitely our gain." My father read the article from his lawyer's office, where he was preparing for criminal charges. His country club had already revoked his membership, citing conduct unbecoming of a member after the FBI investigation became public. Madison's first day as a coordinator was humiliating. She reported to Patricia, who had been my assistant but was now operations supervisor. Patricia didn't go easy on her. "Your first task is to learn our inventory system," Patricia said. "Russell designed it, so it's sophisticated but logical. You'll need to understand it to do anything here." Madison spent 10 hours trying to understand what Russell had built. Every process, every system had layers of complexity she had never imagined. She began to grasp just how much intellectual capital had walked out the door with me. That evening, she went home to her luxury apartment, which she would have to give up soon since she could no longer afford it on her new salary. She sat at her kitchen table and wrote me a letter. "Russell, I know you'll probably never read this, but I need to write it. I was a terrible sister. I took credit for your work. I let Dad treat you unfairly, and I acted like I deserved success just for existing. You protected me even when I didn't deserve it. The letter you left showed me how blind I've been. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She mailed it to Hartwell Corporation, not knowing if it would ever reach me. Meanwhile, 7 more Preston clients had signed contracts with Hartwell, specifically requesting that I manage their accounts. Each transfer was another nail in Preston's coffin. Tuesday brought more revelations. The FBI investigation had uncovered that my father had been bribing city officials to overlook zoning violations for Preston's expansion. The local news ran with the story, and protesters gathered outside Preston's headquarters demanding justice. My father's lawyer advised him to prepare for serious jail time. "The evidence is overwhelming," he said. "Your son documented everything meticulously. Every bribe, every falsified report, every tax evasion scheme. You're looking at 5 to 10 years, minimum." He destroyed me, my father said bitterly. No, his lawyer replied. You destroyed yourself. He just refused to go down with you. At Hartwell, I was implementing new safety protocols, inspired by what had happened to Marcus. I had convinced James to invest $2 million in state-of-the-art safety equipment and training. This seems expensive, the CFO had said. It's 1/10 of what a single serious injury lawsuit would cost, I replied. Plus, it's the right thing to do. I had also reached out to Marcus, offering him a management training position at Hartwell. You deserve a chance to build a career without risking your safety, I told him. Marcus accepted, grateful for the opportunity. You were the only one who cared, Russell. When your father refused to pay for proper safety equipment, you bought it yourself. I never forgot that. Back at Preston, the company was hemorrhaging talent. 40% of the workforce had quit in 2 weeks, most citing loss of confidence in leadership. The stock had dropped 50%, and bankruptcy was being discussed openly in the boardroom. Madison was working 12-hour days, trying to learn what Russell had mastered over 12 years. She was starting to earn some respect from her colleagues, not for her name but for her effort. But it was too little, too late. Thursday brought another blow. My father's wife, my stepmother Jennifer, filed for divorce. She had learned about secret affairs funded by the offshore accounts and decided she wanted out. Thanks to the prenup my father had insisted on to protect his assets, she was entitled to half of everything, which was now under federal investigation. You destroyed our family for money, she told him. You chose greed over your own son, favoritism over fairness. I can't be married to someone like that. My father was now alone in his mansion, which would soon be sold to pay legal fees. The man who had built an empire was watching it crumble because he had forgotten the foundation of any successful business, treating people with respect and fairness. Friday afternoon, Barbara Chen called me. Russell, I know this might be awkward, but would you consider consulting for Preston? We need your expertise to transition your systems to new management. I'm sorry, Barbara, but no, I said. Preston needs to find its own way forward. Besides, I have a non-compete clause with Hartwell now. I understand, she said. For what it's worth, the board knows we lost the wrong Preston. That evening, Madison discovered something that changed everything. While going through old financial records, she found documents about a trust fund their mother had set up before she died. Their father had hidden it from both of them, but it was legally theirs. Madison's share was $200,000, enough to start over. Mine was the same. She immediately sent me the documentation with a note. Dad hid this from us. Half is yours. It's the least I can do. It was the first genuinely decent thing Madison had done in years, and it hinted that maybe, just maybe, she was learning who she really wanted to be. 3 months had passed since I walked out of Preston Manufacturing. The company that my father had spent 30 years building was now in bankruptcy proceedings, about to be sold to the highest bidder. He sat alone in his mansion, surrounded by boxes, preparing to move to a small apartment after the house was foreclosed to pay his legal debts. The criminal trial had begun 2 weeks ago. The prosecution's case was built on the documentation I had provided, meticulous records of bribes, safety violations, and tax evasion spanning 5 years. My father's lawyer had tried to paint me as a vindictive son, but the evidence was too overwhelming. Madison had surprised everyone, including herself. She had been working warehouse shifts at Preston, learning the business from the ground up under Barbara Chen's strict supervision. Her designer clothes had been replaced with steel-toed boots and work uniforms. Her manicured nails were broken from handling inventory. But for the first time in her life, she was earning genuine respect. Madison's actually not bad when she applies herself, Patricia told me during one of our calls. She's been here until midnight every night, studying Russell's systems, learning the supply chain. She's finally becoming the employee she should have been from the start. Madison had been called to testify at our father's trial. She stood in the witness box, looking at the man who had given her everything except the chance to earn it herself. My father created a culture of favoritism and corruption, she said, her voice steady. He promoted me beyond my capabilities and punished Russell for pointing out the obvious. He chose his ego over his employees' safety, his greed over his family. I was complicit in this, and I take responsibility for my part. Her testimony was damaging, but it was also liberating. She was finally free from the golden cage he had built for her. Meanwhile, at Hartwell, I had been promoted to Executive Vice President of Operations. My innovations had increased efficiency by 35% and reduced workplace injuries to 0. The company was thriving, and James Hartford had made it clear that I was being groomed for the CEO position when he retired. The acquisition announcement came on a Tuesday. Hartwell Corporation was buying Preston Manufacturing's assets in a bankruptcy auction for 10 cents on the dollar. James called me into his office. "Russell, I want you to lead the acquisition team. You know Preston better than anyone, and we need to retain the good employees while restructuring the operation." It was surreal, returning to Preston as part of the acquisition team. The building felt smaller somehow, diminished. Employees who had once reported to my father now looked to me for reassurance about their futures. I held an all-hands meeting in the warehouse. "Everyone who worked honestly and competently will have a job with Hartwell," I announced. "We're investing $15 million in safety upgrades and modernization. This facility will become Hartwell's primary manufacturing center, and we're committed to keeping jobs local." The relief in the room was palpable. These people had been victims of my father's greed just as much as I had been. After the meeting, Madison approached me. She looked different, humbler, wearing her work uniform with actual pride. "Russell, thank you for saving these jobs," she said. "These people deserve better than what Dad gave them." "They deserve what everyone deserves," I replied. "Fair treatment and a safe place to work." "I've been thinking," she continued. "I want to earn my place here, really earn it. Would you consider giving me a chance as an entry-level employee at Hartwell? I'll start wherever you think is appropriate." I studied my sister, looking for signs of the entitled princess she had been. Instead, I saw someone who had been broken down and rebuilt, someone who finally understood the value of honest work. "Submit your application through proper channels," I said. "You'll be evaluated like any other candidate. No special treatment, good or bad." "That's all I want," she said, and I believed her. The next day, my father's sentence was delivered. 18 months in minimum security prison for tax evasion, plus 5 years probation and $2 million in fines. His empire was gone, his reputation destroyed, his family fractured. He would serve his time doing manual labor, learning the value of the honest work he had always looked down upon. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me in the gallery. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw no remorse, only anger and self-pity. He still believed he was the victim, but Madison saw it differently. After the sentencing, she approached our father during his last moment of freedom before being taken to prison. "Dad, I forgive you," she said. "Not for what you did, but so I can move forward. You gave me privilege without purpose, success without satisfaction. Russell tried to teach me, but you wouldn't let him. Now I'm learning what I should have learned years ago, that respect is earned, not inherited." Our father said nothing, but his shoulders sagged as the weight of his choices finally hit him. 6 months later, Preston Manufacturing was officially rebranded as Hartwell Manufacturing Division. The sign came down on a rainy Thursday morning. I stood in the parking lot, watching them remove the letters that had spelled out my family name for 30 years. Patricia stood beside me, now Director of Operations, a position she had earned through competence and loyalty. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Bringing down your family's company?" "I didn't bring it down," I said. "My father did that himself. I just refused to let him take everyone else with him." Madison had been hired at Hartwell after a rigorous interview process. She started in inventory management, making $40,000 a year. She had sold her luxury apartment, bought a modest condo, and enrolled in night school for her MBA. She was finally becoming the person she could have been all along. During her lunch break, she found me in my office. "Russell, I wanted to show you something." She pulled out a folder containing a training program she had developed for preventing nepotism in family businesses. "I've been working on this in my spare time," she explained. "It's based on what happened to us, what I learned from my mistakes. I thought maybe Hartwell could use it for management training." I read through it, impressed by the insight and honesty. She had turned our family's dysfunction into something that could help others avoid the same fate. "This is excellent work, Madison. Submit it to HR for review." She smiled, and for the first time in years, it was genuine, earned through effort rather than entitlement. 1 year after I walked out of Preston Manufacturing, I stood in what was now Hartwell's main production facility, watching the most efficient operation in the industry. The same building where my father had cut corners on safety now had the best safety record in the state. The workers who had once feared for their jobs now had profit-sharing plans and clear advancement paths. My father had been released from prison 3 weeks ago, after serving 12 months with good behavior. The man who emerged was different from the one who had entered. 18 months of kitchen duty and janitorial work had taught him humility he had never possessed. He now worked as a junior consultant at a small firm that specialized in helping failed executives rebuild their careers, making $50,000 a year, less than he used to spend on golf club memberships. He had written me a letter from prison, a real apology this time. "Russell, I destroyed everything that mattered for things that didn't. I chose favoritism over fairness, greed over family, pride over people. You didn't betray me. You saved everyone from my worst impulses, including Madison. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I finally understand what I lost when I lost you." Madison had exceeded everyone's expectations. After a year of proving herself in inventory management, she had been promoted to supply chain coordinator. She had earned it through merit, working harder than anyone else, studying Russell's systems until she understood them better than most senior managers. Her training program on nepotism prevention had been adopted company-wide at Hartwell and was being licensed to other corporations. We met for lunch on a Tuesday, the first time we had sat together as siblings rather than adversaries in over 3 years. "I got my first performance bonus yesterday," she said proudly. $5,000. I earned every penny of it." "You did," I agreed. "Your optimization of the inventory system saved us $70,000 last quarter." "It's strange," she reflected. "When Dad gave me a $50,000 bonus for doing nothing, I felt empty. This $5,000 feels like a fortune because I worked for it." "That's the difference between being given something and earning it," I said. "One feeds your ego, the other feeds your soul." Marcus had completed his management training and was now a department supervisor, implementing safety protocols that had become the industry standard. He had started a scholarship fund for children of manufacturing workers, which Hartwell matched dollar for dollar. "You saved my career, Russell," he told me at the company picnic. "After the injury, I thought I was done. Now I'm helping make sure no one else goes through what I did." Patricia had been promoted to Vice President of Operations, making her one of the highest-ranking black women in the manufacturing industry. She had earned it through 15 years of competence and dedication that my father had never recognized. "You know what the best part is?" she said during our weekly meeting. "I'm finally being valued for my brain, not treated like furniture." The transformation was remarkable. The facility that had once been known for accidents and inefficiency was now winning awards for safety and innovation. Morale was at an all-time high. Turnover had dropped to nearly zero. James Hartford called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. "Russell, I'm retiring next year. The board has unanimously approved you as my successor. At 35, you'll be the youngest CEO in Hartwell's history." "James, I'm honored. But—" "No buts," he interrupted. "You've earned this. You took a failing acquisition and turned it into our most profitable division. You've shown that success doesn't require sacrificing integrity." That evening there was a family dinner, the first in over a year. My father, Madison, and I met at a simple restaurant. No luxury, no pretense. My father looked older, humbler, wearing a department store suit instead of designer labels. "I'm proud of both of you," he said quietly. "Madison, for becoming who you were meant to be. Russell, for having the courage to stand up to me." "It wasn't courage," I said. "It was necessity. You left me no choice." "I know," he replied, "and that's my greatest regret. I turned my son into my adversary and my daughter into a decoration. But watching you both now, seeing what you've become despite me, maybe because of opposing me, I see that you're both stronger than I ever was." Madison reached across the table and took his hand. "Dad, we're not strong despite you. We're strong because Russell showed us what strength really looks like. He could have let your corruption continue, could have taken the easy path. Instead, he chose integrity, even when it cost him everything. And gained everything that mattered, I added. 6 months later, I married Jennifer Martinez, a labor rights attorney I had met during the Hartwell acquisition. My father attended, sitting quietly in the back, while Madison was in the wedding party. Marcus gave a speech about how I had stood up for workers when no one else would. Patricia talked about loyalty and integrity. Even Barbara Chen attended, joking that she wished she had hired me instead of letting me go to Hartwell. In my speech, I said something that resonated with everyone there. Success isn't about climbing the ladder by stepping on others. It's about building a ladder strong enough for everyone to climb. When we choose favoritism over merit, when we choose greed over people, we don't just destroy companies, we destroy families, communities, and futures. But when we choose integrity, when we choose fairness, when we choose to stand up for what's right even when it costs us, we build something that can't be destroyed. Trust, respect, and genuine success. The room erupted in applause, but I noticed my father wiping away tears. He finally understood what he had lost and what could have been. A year later, Madison launched her own consulting firm, specializing in preventing nepotism and building merit-based cultures in family businesses. Her first client was a company whose founder's son had just exposed corruption, inspired by our story. "I tell them about us," she said, "about how privilege without purpose almost destroyed me, how favoritism without merit destroyed our father, and how one person's integrity saved an entire company's worth of jobs. She had found her calling, turning our family's greatest failure into her greatest purpose." My father continued his quiet work at the small consulting firm, helping failed executives understand their mistakes. He lived modestly, drove a 10-year-old sedan, and found peace in simplicity he had once scorned. "I spent 30 years building an empire on sand," he told me during one of our monthly coffee meetings. "You built something on bedrock: competence, integrity, and respect for others. Your empire will last." Looking back, the day my father suspended me for refusing to apologize to Madison was the best thing that ever happened to all of us. It forced Madison to confront her incompetence and become competent. It forced my father to face the consequences of his corruption. And it freed me to build something better than what I had left behind. True success comes not from privilege or shortcuts, but from competence, integrity, and treating others with fairness. When we enable mediocrity through favoritism, we destroy both the favored and the organization. Standing up for what's right, even against family, ultimately saves everyone, including those who wrong us, from their own destruction. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? Have you witnessed favoritism destroy a workplace or relationship? What would you have done in my situation? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about integrity, justice, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that choosing integrity, even when it costs everything, is always worth it. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, your worth isn't determined by your last name or who you know, but by what you contribute and how you treat others. Stay strong, stay fair, and never apologize for demanding what you deserve.